Hey everybody, Andrew here, introducing this week's episode. Sean is actually, I found out Sean could not make this episode because his baby had a crazy blowout. So on this episode, we're interviewing Jack Dunbar of New Kingdom Gaming. We talk about launching a second crowdfunding campaign. We talk about Jack's lessons learned from his first campaign, why start a business, what you can gain from working with designers as opposed to designing games yourself, dealing with feedback, and also crowdfunding metrics. It's a really great episode that meanders a pretty good amount. We also get into customer avatar stuff. Hope you guys enjoy it. Let's get into it.
Game begin.
Let's go.
Bring your pretty face to my ad.
Amazing.
Hey everybody, and welcome to another awesome episode of Crowdfunding Nerds. I am your host, Andrew Lowen, and I am joined this time not by Sean and not Rick. And in Rick's place, we have Jack Dunbar of New Kingdom Gaming. Welcome to the show.
Hey, Andrew. Yeah, thanks for having me back on the show. It's great to chat with you.
Thank you. Yeah. So we wanted to talk about running a second campaign. We were talking before the podcast began recording about, your game that you've got on Kickstarter right now and my plans for, Deliverance and where we're going next and all of that. And it was like kind of the topic really became clear of, we had all of these things that we're thinking about and it's just time to get them out. The whole purpose of our podcast is to provide a firsthand experience or firsthand account of what's actually working, what's not working, what we would change if we did it again, and so on. And there's no better topic probably on those lines than to discuss what we're going to do next time, right? And what you're ahead of me, are actually doing right now. So I'm really excited to dive in. So, but first, can you give me a 30-second intro of who you are, what your projects are, and what you've got going on?
Sure. Yeah. So my name is Jack Dunbar. I live in Washington State, and I started a small publishing business with my first Kickstarter. So I ran a Kickstarter last April called New Kingdom Gardeners. Raised just over $16,000 on that campaign. Fulfilled that in December of 23, and backers have been playing it, been having a good time. And in the process of fulfilling this Kickstarter, got a line of games actually established that are ready to go. So I'm working through sort of building a business from a little bit of initial momentum, and it's crazy. It's it's scary doing it by yourself. It's nerve-wracking sometimes, and it helps to have friends like Andrew who you can bounce ideas off of and get help from, because running this solo act, small publisher, indie game developer business is no joke. There's a lot to manage and maintain, and Andrew and I have both been chatting about upcoming Kickstarters that we're working on. Andrew obviously doing more with Deliverance, and for me, I have a number of games lined up, and we've taken some similar approaches and some different approaches. So it's I'm excited to get into this and talk about it with you, Andrew.
Yeah. So, normally I would ask what got you into this, but what made you do it again? And in particular, I'm actually curious about your strategy. So you probably, and from our last conversation, what I remember is you had this game idea, it needed to become a thing, and you made it that way. But then there was this transition at some point where you were like, I'm going to turn this into a business. And you actually have a lot of experience on Amazon and with Amazon. I'm really excited to see what you do with the New Kingdom series on Amazon. When the time comes. But I from what I recall, this New Kingdom Sowers campaign that you have running right now has a different designer. So you have elected to kind of pursue others' designs and sign other designs and fuel your, you as the publisher are fueled by designers now. Can you talk to me about that choice?
Sure. Yeah. So designing, what I found in the business of board game publishing is that the biggest bottleneck is design. It takes the most time of anything. It takes the most investment in terms of, it really takes the most monetary investment, to be honest, because your time is money when you're running a business. And if you are sinking years of your life into designing a game, which many of us do, there's opportunity cost associated with that time that you can never get back. And it's that time spent that I've found is most valuable to me in this stage of life, where it's like I've got this young business, I have a young family. I actually, so this is my only small business. I also run an accounting firm with a guy, and we're building a small business there too. So time is at a premium for me, and I found that uh, like twofold, really. Like one, I get to recover some of my time by outsourcing designers. But here's the other really beautiful thing about it is I get to highlight other designers who don't want to do the business
Mm.
end of things. Like I know some other great, thoughtful, considerate game designers who are pouring their life into projects that they're concerned won't see the light of day because they're looking at things like hitting a convention circuit to do pitches, trying to get eyes on their game from any publisher at all, and then getting through those hurdles of like, is this a good fit? Can this like, is there market potential for this game? Like all of the nuts and bolts of developing a contract, like I can kind of step into that as a rampant playtester myself. I see lots of games, and I can just say like, oh, hey, I like that. It
Yeah,
fits my line. I like you. Let's publish your game.
that's
So
awesome.
yeah.
I like what you said, and there are a number of things in there that you said I'd love to touch on, but one is I like this, it fits into my line, is really important. A lot of people design a game, like I have this idea for a game that I think would be a perfect fit for chip theory games.
Oh,
And,
nice. Yeah.
I haven't given it tons and tons of time yet, but I'm pretty sure that chip theory games has like 7 years of titles like ready to go.
Yeah.
They're probably not going to be accepting pitches. And even if they see an idea that's like, wow, that's a really great idea, it would totally fit our line, they've got a lot of other things that they've already committed to. And
Mhm.
so I think that for designers, the self-publishing route is totally, is the choice that a lot of them make because they want
Yeah.
to see their thing come to life. And that's what I had to do with Deliverance, partly because no one else wanted to take it or was willing to
Yeah.
take it at the time. And the or rather, I'll rephrase and say was able to take it at the time because there were others that wanted to take it. I don't know how my video got turned off, but here I am. So the the first time creator wants to see their creation come to life, and then when the time comes for to do it again, that's really where the rubber meets the road. Like, do I really want to go through all of this again? It was a lot of work and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Um, and so a lot of the time the answer is no. I did
Yeah.
the thing once. I'm really happy and satisfied that I did a thing that, you know, blessed a bunch of people. And wow, that was
Yeah.
a lot of work. I did not make as much money as I thought. Right.
I I don't fault
Obviously.
or I don't fault or blame anybody for throwing in the towel after they've run a campaign.
Mhm.
Like I really had to think about it, pray about it, talk to my wife about it. Like, do we keep going? Because
Yeah.
like honestly, that first campaign, Andrew, was it was an investment, and I
Mhm.
haven't made I haven't made that investment back at all from that campaign. Um, Part of that was bad math, like just learning to figure out how all of the costs build,
Yeah.
and part of it was I really viewed it as like it was kind of like getting a college degree. It's like a crash course, right? Like there's some investment, you're gonna make some mistakes, you're gonna like pay for things you don't need to pay for.
Yeah.
And that's uh I'm a uh I'm a Christian and a pastor. But a
A
phrase that
Christian, a
I've
pastor, an accountant, and a publisher?
yeah. Well, my name is Jack. I wear a lot of hats. Jack of all
Yeah.
trades, I guess.
Wow, don't get
Just
burned
put
by
me
the
through that.
title stick though.
Yeah, I can't. Yeah, that's the problem. Like, I can't be satisfied doing one thing. But anyway, I do that on. It's like a lay pastor thing.
Yeah.
I do it pretty much volunteer. But uh, one of my one of my favorite quotes though is not from the Bible. It's actually Confucius, which is there are three ways to learn. The first the easiest is imitation, the highest is contemplation, and the hardest is experience. And I feel like that's what crowdfunding is. Like you get some pretty harsh lessons
Yeah.
the hard way, sort of like school of hard knocks.
Yep.
And
It is
that's
tough when
yeah,
you for a designer that doesn't understand what it's like to have your game out there in the public space, to have somebody trash talk it or just feel indifferent to it. That's probably the thing that hurts my feelings the most when somebody's like, I hate this game because I hate this guy and he's the worst and whatever. That's actually easier to take than like, this game's all right.
I don't know.
It's all right. Like, tell me it's great or tell me it's horrible, but like, what makes you so indifferent to it? You know?
Yeah.
But that happens, right? You get all types of reactions when your game actually releases. And like I had a couple of hard reviews come out this week. I say hard reviews, but they overall, like even Deliverance's negative reviews are quite positive, where
Yeah.
everybody will say, like, oh yeah, this game wasn't for me, but I see why people are rating this game a 9 and whatever. And
Yeah.
like One Stop Co-op Shop just released a review where it talked about 5 things in Deliverance, and there were some things that the guy really liked, and other things that the guy was like, oh, I really felt like this just didn't hit the mark for me, and that's how it went. And then there was somebody else that was going to write like some sort of text review, and I'll actually be talking to him on his podcast in the future. He had
Cool.
probably the most negative reaction in his group for Deliverance. The thing is with like the short is that Deliverance, you can't just hit your highest damage buttons and win. You have
Yeah.
to deal with other things that are going to destroy you.
You have to pray.
Yes, you have to use your pray actions. You have to cast out darkness, or you're just
Yeah.
totally owned. And you have to protect the saints. And if you
Yeah.
don't understand how important the saints are, you're just gonna feel like you're drowning under the sea of darkness. And there was the guy's gamer group really, really loved games like Zombicide and other like they finished this campaign driven game. I can't remember what the name is. It was like some sort of like a Viking style game, but it was a
Okay.
campaign driven game that basically was like press your heaviest buttons and swing your weapon against tons of bads and
Yeah.
just see them all fall over and
Smash.
yeah.
And
Yeah, and so they
destroy
were all
zombies.
exactly. So they were all kinda frustrated that they couldn't just do that. And I think it might have been that, since they finished that game, they just wanted more of that or whatever. But yeah, that was overall like quite a negative reaction. And that actually I'm okay with that. I'm actually kind of glad that if a game is really, really good, it should receive a really strongly positive reaction from some and a really strongly negative reaction from others. And
Yeah.
so it's been interesting to kind of see all of that come out totally out of my control. Like,
Mhm.
I mean, we have had really, really good things happen. Like in the same week, we got a bunch of award nominations, which is really cool.
Yeah.
On Board Game Geek, and had some, relatively negative reviews hit. It's like,
Yeah.
okay,
I think it's funny you mentioned like the high and low reviews. Like I think that's a sign of success. Like if you get tens and ones, right? Like that's good. Um my most popular post ever on like Facebook or in any groups was I took a screenshot of my Board Game Geek listing. It was like somebody had written a 10 with a comment that was like, "This game's fantastic. It's designed really well. It's like a staple in our family. We love it. We're like experiencing all of the goodness of God's grace as we play." Just like this like flowering review. Like I'm embellishing, but it was like, that kind of level of like, wow, okay. And then the next one was like, one, this game is incomprehensible. The rules are terrible. Like, did they even think about it? Like, we had no idea what we were doing the whole time we were playing.
Yeah.
I just like screenshotted those because they were like on the same day and posted it in Board Game Design Lab, and it got like, to date, it's gotten like 600 reactions and like dozens and dozens of comments. And the funny thing is, like, that 1-star review has probably done more for like the awareness of my game than any of the tens.
That's so funny. I love that. It reminds me in some ways of like the 1-star Amazon reviews for like gummy bear vitamins or whatever. Like, if you've seen some of
Yeah.
those that are really funny, they're
Yeah.
just like, I ate like 3 entire containers of this, and like
It's
try
like
this
this will,
breakfast, and
yeah,
you know,
this will permanently change your gut flora, like stuff
yeah,
like
yeah, it's funny,
that.
but yeah,
Yeah.
it's just interesting, and I will say it does take a certain type of person, or rather, maybe somebody who has developed thick skin to
Mm,
deal with the this stuff. One thing that I always look at Jamie Stegmaier as kind of a someone who's much further along and has a lot more experience. He sends out
yeah.
lots and lots of review copies. He actually states all the time that he does not read or watch reviews of his products.
Yeah.
And I think that the reviews are a side effect almost. They're not like the reason you did it.
Yeah.
You made the game for your customer, you made the game for you, you made the game for those that would enjoy it, and that kind of thing. But you didn't make the game for critics. The
Yeah.
critics are just going to constructively criticize
Yeah.
as they do. They're going to review, and they're going to say what they like and what they don't. And sometimes people will call your baby ugly, and like I had
Yeah.
one guy say that the game he liked the game, but when he talked about like the we'll say like the thematic things, he got something wrong. He was like the darkness. He thought the darkness was the demons having an effect on people, and there was
Mm,
this there are some cards in there that if you have that perspective, they're going to. It's like uh a lot of ignorance on the part of the designer if that was the case, right? So like medical delirium was a card. The what is it? Manic
mm,
depression. That was it.
yeah.
Manic
Hmm.
depression. It's like if demons are at fault for manic depression, if every single person in the world who is depressed
Yeah.
because a demon's doing it, then they're not, there are a lot of it's outside of their control. There's nothing they can do. They're entirely helpless. And then, a bunch of other things that it's like medication is useless and all of the other things that go along with that, right? And that
Yeah.
is not my intent at all, right? Those are the intent with the darkness deck is to more of a commentary on the evil things that happen in this world, right? Like
Sure.
cancer happens and death and disease and
Yeah.
sickness and mental health issues, not necessarily the fault of demons or the fault of people, but maybe the fault of certainly the fallen nature of the world that we live
Yeah.
in, right?
Yeah,
But,
for sure. Well, it's really interesting because this is one of our commonalities, Andrews, who both design specifically religious themed games on
mhm.
purpose. Like,
Wow,
um,
we're like the 2.
yeah, well, I know.
How many
Like,
of us
yeah,
are there out
there
there?
aren't very many of us. There are some though. Like, and that's one of the things that I'm excited about with publishing is like elevating designers who don't want to do the business and are in that niche. Like,
Mhm.
I might be one of the only people they can pitch. So
Yeah.
it's cool. It's a good niche. But uh, yeah, I mean, two things on that. Like, one is like it's really interesting how much people want to suspend their disbelief until it gets religious, and then they're like, I can't suspend my disbelief. Right?
Mhm.
Like in your case, like, well, demons can't be behind that. It's like, why not? Like,
Yeah. Well, I
like
had
that's kind of a
it was it was,
kind of funny.
it was a really fun discussion. It was like in YouTube comments of someone else's video. I felt like it was important for me to clarify that, there was somebody that was like a mental a nurse in a mental hospital that had given some commentary, and so I felt that
Yeah.
it was really important to say, like, "No, I'm not an ignorant twit. I promise."
Yeah. Yeah.
There are while I don't doubt
Yeah.
that that demons are at the root of some, of depression sometimes, I also
Sure.
acknowledge there are many other issues that could cause things like that, right?
Yeah.
Maybe if my game didn't do that well, or maybe if I watch a really terrible review of it online. Like I'm depressed. Doesn't mean a demon made that happen. So anyway, so I felt the need to clarify, and I don't know. It's just sometimes there's this Mike Tyson quote that I love. One of the most important things that I before I share it, one of the most important things that I have decided, and I think everybody needs to be at peace with, is that I will have an explanation that I can give for each individual
Yeah.
element. I think that it gets a little more scrutinized when you're playing with a lore base that people really love. If you're playing with Lord of the Rings and you make, Rings of Power, you're going to get haters that are mad that you mistreated the lore. Fallout,
Right.
which treated the lore extremely carefully and with beauty, was
Yeah.
highly praised for just getting right there,
Mhm.
in with all the players, all the people that love that universe. And in
Yeah.
the same way, like the Bible is, that's a lore base that you better treat right, and it just
Oh
seems like
yeah.
there's no way to treat it perfectly. So my thought is that I will have a logical answer for people that say, "Hey, why are there female angels? Hey, why are there whatever?" Right? Why are there saints? Why are there darkness and blah? But, my answer, I will give it, and I don't mind if they agree with it or not. The important
Yeah.
thing is that I have logically considered this, and, whether they are in agreement with it or not is aside from the point. And I think that in the same way, really any designer designing a game, you have to be okay with disagreement. Like, there will be people that disagree with you that say, I have people all the time that would tell me before I published the game, they would be like, "Why are these angels not these godlike epic wheels with eyeballs everywhere that are just these fearsome creatures?" Or like, why are
Yeah.
they not like Tyrael from Diablo, kind of
Yeah.
godlike, cool fantasy, like power fantasy creatures?
Yeah.
And it just, I had to, like, I gave my rationale, and they're like, "But it would be so cool if you did it this way." And it's like, "I understand, thank you for your feedback. But I'm not gonna change it." But it's, that's the way it is. And I think that that's part of having thick skin, I think, is just being okay with, like, reasoning through challenges and being okay with that and whatnot. And then, like, there's, of course, on the other end of the coin, you've got to listen to feedback from people and you make
Yeah.
changes. That's actually something we've been in this next deliverance campaign. We'll be making some changes to the core game and issuing an update pack and that kind of thing, which we can get into down the road. But the
Yeah.
Mike Tyson
We
quote,
should.
I
Okay. Yeah.
Mike Tyson quote is do not um try to let's see. Dang it. Now I'm missing it. I should have just said it when I had the chance. Don't try to explain yourself to people that are committed to misunderstanding you.
Oh yeah.
So, and that's doubly true for probably for people in any kind of religious setting on both sides of the spectrum. In
Yeah.
fact, I often find that non-Christians will say, like, secular people that are just interested in game and theme and whatever. Those people are not really committed to misunderstanding so much
Yeah.
like we'll say other Christians can be. Like, they're
Yeah.
like, "Oh, you are the devil incarnate, and
Yeah.
there are serious problems with this." Um
Yeah. No, yeah, that's really interesting. Like, um, I think you said a few things I really like, Andrew. Like, one is, you have an answer. Like, as uh, like as a as a Christian, like for me, it's like study and show yourself approved of God. Like I've gone to the scriptures, I've studied the traditions, and this actually doesn't just apply to Christian designs or religious designs. This applies to board game design more broadly. Like, the criticism is there regardless of what kind of product you put out there. Like you said, fantasy, people have certain preconceived ideas of what fantasy should be. And then people have other, like, they have preconceived ideas of how culture should be represented. Like, that's a big thing. Like, people saying, like, "Oh, you have people in your game? Did you get a cultural, like, consultant? Because make sure that, like, you did, and you're representing people appropriately." I think that, like, that criticism is actually a very good thing because it pushes us to a higher level of quality.
mhm.
And, like, it pushes you not to just have pat answers for things, but to have really thorough, thought through answers.
Yep. Yeah, and also, I think one of the important things. So I have one of my fans is a very, I don't want to use this term in a negative way, but like a very legalistic Christian. He
Mhm.
is kind of
Yeah,
like by the book, if that
sure.
if that
Yeah.
makes sense, like in a certain way. And
Very, very law oriented.
yeah, yeah. And so one of the things that we're doing in our next expansion is we actually have a pet class. So an angel that has a giant winged lion that she commands, named Nebuchadnezzar.
Mhm.
And it's awesome. But he asked me, like, "So what is the theology behind this winged lion?" Because it's basically like familiars
Mhm.
are a demonic thing, like the concept behind talking animals and whatever that have and that kind of thing. And it's like, well, my logic is that the animals, this guy kind of represents, well, first of all, there's Daniel 7:4, which talks about, the King Nebuchadnezzar was like a lion that stood
Yeah.
up on his hind legs and was given the heart of a man. And that's kind of our that's actually our company's symbol. Like that's our iconography.
And he's
And
humbled. He has his wings torn off in that
yep,
vision. Yeah.
right. So
Yeah.
so I think that the theologically, like that's where it kind of comes from. It's really an allegory for Nebuchadnezzar and his humbling and becoming a good dude after being such a bad dude. And
Mhm.
the but he was like, okay, well, what about the anamorph thing? It's like, well, I mean, my dad has a dog, for example. He loves his dog. He loves his dog Charlie. It's a big German Shepherd, really, really nice dog. It's awesome. Loves my kids. 120 pounds. Sometimes runs so fast he knocks my kids over and whatever, but such a good dog overall, like so well meaning. He always tries to make it better. And
Yeah.
one day he'll pass away. And it's like, where does he go? Right? When you
Yeah.
have a beloved animal, where do they go? I think they go to heaven. All good dogs go to heaven, I think. And there's
I am remaking all things.
yeah. Yeah. So I kind of look at it like, their information is stored in like a giant computer database and they're going to be like, they'll be waiting for you in your house, there'll be a copy of your favorite animal like waiting for you in your house. I don't know. But but that's kind of where the idea came from for this animal companion.
Mhm.
And that's really where my logic kind of ends, other than like, hey, but it's really
Yeah.
cool also. And he's like, well, help me understand why and blah blah. And I actually just told him, like, look, I don't have a fully reasoned, fully fleshed out answer. I'm still malleable, if that makes sense. And I think that's an okay place to be. Um,
Yeah.
it's like I don't have all the answers. I am not God myself. And so
Yeah.
I don't want to be also so rigid in my position that I'm unwilling to hear the other side or other sides, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, and that kind of gets like feedback. I think the answer to all feedback is thank you.
Yeah.
Like, thank you for caring to share that
Yeah.
with me, you know? But then there are kind of three categories. It's like immediately dismiss because it's irrelevant. It's like consider and then heavily consider. And like, something like that, if I were in your shoes, I would hear that and like I would consider it and really think like, okay, what is my good answer for this?
Mhm.
Um, you know, but the heavily consider thing is like you're doing something symbolic anyway. Like you said, your angels are not 100% biblically accurate to the description of
They're
angels
very
all
not
the
biblically
time.
accurate, actually, when you think about it.
Yeah,
Like,
and that's an
it's
intentional
good looking people
decision.
with 2 wings. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like an intentional decision to help people connect with a being that they could never
Mhm.
connect with, like
Yeah.
in our material
Mhm.
understanding of what thing how existence is framed. Like,
Yeah.
you know, but I don't know. I think that to go back to the thick skin thing, I think it's really interesting. Like the creative process is so much like thinking outside the box and then putting stuff back into a box. It's
Yeah.
like take it out of the box, create a new box and put
Yep.
stuff in that box. And that's what you've done. Like I have a box, like
Yeah.
Deliverance is a box that like now exists and can't be changed, like to a degree.
Yeah.
Where like if you add a new angel, they're going to probably look like people to a degree. And like maybe you can kind of like reshape the box a little bit. Maybe you'll have some sort of funky, weird looking angel and
Yeah.
like a
If the
new
angel with 4
expansion
heads,
somehow.
animal heads or whatever, right? But
Yeah, yeah, eyes everywhere, whatever,
mm,
And you can do that. You can like play within that box, but like the box is there, it's built.
yeah.
And I think like with creative stuff, it's so close to our heart because it comes out of our heart. This is another point for why I've opted to use other designers' designs because
Yeah.
I'm working with Fritz Paul on Prestige, which comes out this summer. I've been working with Scott Cable on Sowers. He designed it. It's really nice for me because I play the games. I'm like, I love this game. This is a fun game. And I don't consider myself a casual gamer. I'm like a super backer and pledge
Mhm.
master with hundreds of games that hosts weekly game nights, goes to conventions and plays 18 games in a weekend. Like
Yep.
I'm not casual. If I like a game,
Yeah.
I'm pretty confident that my opinion like has some weight there. Like I
Yeah.
know games. So
Mhm.
if it's good, at least I like it and I can sit there and be like, yeah, it's a great game.
Yeah.
It's fun to me and my family, and we have a good time with it. So I know there's other gamers out there who will like it. Um, and it's really nice to be able to do that, because then when people come with those like specific like ad hominem or like personal attacks
Mhm.
on like a design or something, it doesn't affect me the same with like
Yeah.
sewers or prestige, because I'm like, yeah, I mean, I don't know, I didn't design it, so
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, it's really curious, moving into this, you're choosing to have other designers design your games. The I guess the logic that you gave was that creative energy creativity requires a lot of energy. Creative thought is really challenging, um, to do a lot of it.
Mhm.
There are times I feel like I have about 8 hours of creative thought, we'll say output per week,
Mhm.
which is a lot. I think that that's a lot. And
That
if
is a lot.
I sit down, I can just bam, and usually it's a block of 4 hours that I just sit and I'm like, all this great stuff's coming out. And then another block of 2 hours, a block of 2 hours. But outside of that, it's like creating new bosses, creating new whatever. It's really difficult to just sit down and say, I'm gonna make this now
Yeah.
or whatever. A lot of the time the information has been stewing in my head for a really long time. And when it's ready to come out, it's not half baked. It's like it's fully baked and it's ready. And all of a sudden it just starts needing to burst. It's ready to burst the doors open that it's so ready to come out. And I feel
Yeah.
so compelled that I must sit down and do this. But to have somebody else design a thing, like all of that process, however they do it, it's been generally fully baked by the time you get it. And maybe the art's not there, or maybe the theme needs to be changed, or some of, like you said, that some of that thought,
Yeah.
into the universe needs to be completed and so that it feels whole. Um, but that sure does take a massive amount of work and shoulder it onto, in essence, what becomes a subcontractor, right?
Yeah.
Like a designer that's hoping for royalties, but also hoping that their thing hits the market. How
Yeah.
has that experience been for you working with others, in your next several projects, whereas you did the first one all on your own?
Yeah. I like it. I like having other heads to bounce ideas off of. It helps you clarify creative vision for one thing, and there's like always a tiebreaker in decisions. Like that's a really nice thing. Is like, um, you know, I don't like to. I'm very clear with the designers that I've signed and like the games that I'm working on with them. Like this is your game, and I want to work with you on it. I don't want to like take it from you and make it my thing. Like it's now our thing, and I want us both to be happy with it. Um, but it can sometimes help. Like I've because I know I experienced this in my own design process, because I haven't given up designing either. Like I am designing a game
Mhm.
that I'm working on that's also angels and forces of evil and
The
like
Tribulation game, right?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
I'm
where's that t-shirt? I saw that
oh
t-shirt.
yeah, yeah.
Uh-huh.
I'm wearing my tribulation shirt today. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um Yeah, no, I've still been doing some design, and you hit those roadblocks where you're just like,
Mhm,
where do I go from here?
mhm,
And it helps to have another person involved to say like, do this, you
mhm,
know, or like, hey, we're not going to do that. Like, here's a really very simple example is Fritz, who is working on a game called Prestige that I'm bringing to crowdfunding in July. He has been working on this game design for years. It was actually
mhm,
owned by another publisher. I bought it from them and have kind of been working with Fritz to get it to market. Um, there's like been a few little art things we needed to clean up, and most recently we had to do coins.
mhm,
And there was kind of like I let him sort of manage art direction with a new artist that we worked on with graphics, because I'm like, listen, you know what you want for icons. You are a great icon designer. I trust you as the artist. I trust you as the designer. Like, you
mhm,
guys chat about it, and then I could just delegate it and not. I got to jump in every once in a while, and that was a really helpful role for me as the publisher, where they're like, "Hey, we're stuck on this. We don't know what to do. What do you want to do?" I
mhm.
go with A.
Yeah.
I like coins. Like for example, they were between, should we put this particular character from the game, the noble king, or should
Mhm,
we put the donkey on the coin?
Yep.
And I was like, don't put the donkey. That's political. Like
Yeah.
it just sounds like American politics,
Mhm.
and there could be all kinds of connotations. People will be like, what does the donkey mean?
Yeah.
I'm like, I love it biblically, but don't like it for the American politics. Like,
Right.
not because I don't like,
Is it right? It basically
Democrat or
represents the
Republican.
Democratic
It's
Party,
just,
right? So
yeah.
it's
And it's just like, I don't
it's
want that.
unintended.
Yeah. I don't want that unintentional association on
Right.
the symbol. Like,
Yeah.
that's not what it represents. It represents something
Mhm.
else. So, uh, like stuff like that, little tiebreakers, you can jump in and say like, oh, go with this. That just will make more sense. It's less, it takes
Yeah.
out any controversy or question. It's less ambiguous. Like, let's do that.
Yeah.
You know.
So that's pretty good. And now kind of leaning into this, you've gone so let's pivot and talk about this next crowdfunding campaign that you have live right now.
Mhm.
The lessons that you learned from your first crowdfunding campaign that you applied to this one.
Yeah. Well, I think the um, biggest lesson for me, and something that I told you I've been thinking through a lot, is funding goal.
Yeah.
Um, like for me, the approach to these campaigns has been very data driven, where I've just learned a lot more about like metrics that you can use to benchmark yourself. And there are a number of those that just stick in my head as like, these are tried and true. And I've seen them over and over, not just on, like, I didn't just see it on my campaign and hear about it from you and others in the like marketing space and on the Crowdfunding Nerds podcast. I have also seen them in other designers. Like one thing that I do on the side is I do consulting. So like I'll meet with people to talk about their Amazon strategy. I'll talk to them about accounting. Um, I'll talk to them just about like publishing and business if they want. So that's been a nice like additional revenue stream for my business to kind of keep things in like a good cash flow position. Um, but with that, I've seen a lot of metrics, and there are some really reliable ones. Like for instance, 20% of your Kickstarter followers will back you. Like that's pretty reliable. Um, I have yet to see a campaign that deviates strongly from that in what I've encountered.
And I
And
would say,
sometimes if they do deviate, it's
Mhm.
positively. It's like
Yeah.
it goes up from 20%.
Yeah, and I was gonna say, like, if they deviate, there's a reason, right? Like, if
Yeah.
it's lower than that, which is actually, like you said, it's not common. Like, even for me, I've done, almost 200 Kickstarter campaigns right now, and it's
Yeah.
that's a pretty solid number. If it's below 15% conversion, then there's usually a problem with either the perceived quality or a lot of the time it's like an information there was not enough information. Backers didn't have enough information so that when you launch your Kickstarter campaign and they got the information, like, wait, this isn't what I expected. Um,
Hmm.
or it could be like a price thing again, which kind of boils down to information where it's like, I didn't know it would cost this much. I'm not ready to spend that much.
Yeah.
And other things like that. And then, like you said, when it delights people, they jump in and, at greater rates. But, usually it's as long as you are communicating and everything. I find the Kickstarter follower count or, as to a less strong degree, the game found follower count as well. They are the amalgamation of all of your marketing. So like
Mhm.
your Facebook
Mhm.
community, your
Yeah.
Discord, your email, your Board Game Geek, your Kickstarter updates, all of the people that see those things and are highly motivated, they also follow on Kickstarter or GameFound, right? So,
And my assumption, just based on looking at my own referral tags,
mhm,
Andrew, is that the reason that that number is 20% is because those are the people who are following you everywhere.
mhm,
The other 80% are the people who are just following on Kickstarter. They
yeah,
they like a touch with a Facebook ad, went to Kickstarter, you lost them, you never gained
mhm,
their email, they've never heard anything from you. Like that's like 50-50. Will they back or not? Probably not. I guess it's an 80-20. It's like,
yeah,
they end up in the 80% that doesn't back. So
yep,
um so yeah, all that to say, like when you can pick out those metrics, and for me those metrics are 20% of your pre-launch followers. Like
mhm,
that's a really reliable number.
yep,
Another really reliable number is your manufacturing and shipping quotes.
yep,
Like especially if you get those and you get the rate tables and you can really like digest that information
mhm,
into knowable averages. Like understandable averages, you can make really good predictions on costs.
Yep.
And when you have like a very set number for cost, and you have a very set idea of what your backer count is going to be, then you have various levers you can pull to affect an end result.
Yep.
And for me, one of the biggest levers that you can pull that doesn't get talked about enough, I think, is funding goal. Like here's the mistake I made with gardeners. I said, I want to recruit, I want to not cover just printing and shipping. I want to recoup some marketing cost. That was a big mistake. Like, I already spent the marketing cost. If I want to recoup that, I should do so by overprinting, by funding, by overfunding, not by baking it into my funding goal. Like on gardeners, I funded in like the middle of the 4th day. So it was like 3.5 days that it was on Kickstarter, which I think was a little bit too late to hit my goal. I think
so you funded in 3.5 days.
Yeah.
I mean, the goal is like always to fund on the first day or second day, right?
Yeah. Which Sowers did. It funded like overnight. So it funded on the first day, like in that first 24 hours. And that was because of international backers who I knew were coming. And just, because of timing, like the campaign launched when it was like 9 p.m. in England. So I knew there were some followers in the UK who were going to back and did. And they came on that next morning for them, which was after hours for me. So, but anyway, all that to say, like gardeners, I had in my brain, like, okay, 1, I want to print 1,000 units, and 2, I want to cover some marketing costs. That was a huge mistake. Luckily, I had a consultant in Max Robbins who encouraged me to drop my funding goal. But I wish that I dropped it further. Yeah. I wish
Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu also, which
does he really?
I like him even more. Yeah.
I have never talked to him about that. That's interesting. But yeah, Max has been a big supporter and help for me. Like I reduced my expectations a little bit and said, well, what if I just print 500? Like, what if I get 100 backers? Can I print 500 and ship them? The cost for that would have been like about $5,000 for gardeners. My funding goal could have been $5,000, and I ended up at 16,000. Because of where I set my funding goal on that project, I funded at 175%, and I funded on the 4th day of the campaign. Had I adjusted that, we would have funded like in the first 3 hours. Would I have gone far beyond $16,000? My guess is yes. I think I would have gotten a higher conversion rate on the 2nd day. I would have, potentially hit $10,000 that much faster, which then hits 15 and eventually gets you to a number that's more like 300 to 400% of your funding goal.
Yeah. It is curious. I noticed, so when I ran Deliverance the very first time, I elected to say, okay, I spent a ton of money. I actually talked to my wife about this. We were about 60,000 in the hole. And, Deliverance is a very big game. And the funding goal was going to be $40,000. And the reason for that was because that is the amount that I needed to make 500 units of Deliverance and ship it to the US. And then if others wanted it, I could do like a send from China thing if there were a few people here and there. And so we calculated that too. It was actually closer to 50K. But I thought if I hit 40, then I can hustle for 50. And we had a lot of momentum as well. So I wasn't just, launching because of data, or because of the, this is what I needed. But what I elected to say was, this is manufacturing and freight, and then we're gonna, charge for shipping later in the pledge manager. We have a lot of momentum, but rather than building in the reimbursement of this stuff, I mean, 60,000 is already on my, between a credit card and a home equity line of credit, like that. I have that debt. So whether I fund 40K or fund 100K to repay myself, I still will have that debt. The only right option, the correct answer is to say this debt is sunk cost. I have already sunk it into the project, and therefore I should not base future decisions upon what I've already sunk. you need
Mhm.
to exclude that. And we've done podcasts about sunk cost, the sunk
Yeah.
cost fallacy in the past, using sunk cost to make future decisions, right? But
Mhm.
the idea is that I needed to make and ship the game. And what I decided long before I was into debt at a rate of $60,000 was that the game needed to be made and we were willing to pay the price to do it.
Yeah.
And we were going to make every single effort to get funded and to do well and whatnot. And we were honored, with a very quick funding.
Mhm.
We ended up funding $140,000 or so on the first day.
Yeah.
But if I funded 100, if I asked for 100K, would I have funded that much on the first day? My
Yeah.
gut is that I would not have.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, and imagine if you had set that funding goal as like, oh, I want, not to print 500 units. I want to print 1,000 and ship them.
mhm,
Then your
mhm,
funding goal is, like you said, it's 80 to 100K. It's
mhm,
it's double what it was before. And you're thinking, well, that's what I'll need to actually like really cover my costs and my debt. That would be like if your only recourse for repaying your debt is crowdfunding, it puts you in a desperate position where your funding goal is too high.
right. Yeah, and it does make a difference. What I find is that a reasonable funding goal, the one thing I generally advise against is an artificially low funding goal that is so low
Yeah.
that it's clear that you would not. There's no way that you can make the game for this amount. But the designer's expecting to make a whole lot more, so that's why they're putting the funding goal so low. Be like if you put your funding goal at $100 or something, right?
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
It's like, well, I know that that's not enough money to make this, even if the designer's like, oh, I'm gonna make this no matter what. It's like, well, it's generally not. You're not playing from a position of strength with a strategy like that.
Mhm.
There are certain companies, for example, I want to say like Gameland Games with a Tiny Epic Game of Thrones that's on Kickstarter right now. They've had it's like their 30th project that
Yeah.
Gameland has done. Um, if they're at 5,000, it's just like a vanity number. They're going to make hundreds of thousands on that project. If
That's right.
another company that does this all the time is AEG. Whenever they
Mhm.
go to Kickstarter, it's like a
Yeah.
$5,000 funding goal. They've got a huge following. They're going to get funded and
Yeah.
then some, plenty of funding. And
Yeah.
so the funding goal is almost irrelevant. It's just a matter of like they are going to make it anyway, but they are going to have the backers to jump in. And so
Yeah.
for me and in regard to funding goal, I think that my next Kickstarter, I'm actually going to have a higher funding goal than before.
Mhm.
And the reason for that is one reason is because I believe that a lot of my current Deliverance fans are going to be jumping in
Yeah.
and that we're going to make that funding. And I think the other element is actually related to stretch goals and like how I want to,
Mhm.
want to kind of infuse stretch goals into the campaign and that kind of
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
If I ran, but this is, I think, your New Kingdom Gardeners and the New Kingdom Sowers, they're actually two separate games, right?
Yeah. They're
And
totally different. They have a shared artist and a shared like universe in which
mhm,
they exist. And there's something that you can expect in terms of like, okay, what is this? It's biblically themed, it's allegorical.
mhm,
Like that is the same. And so I really, my company is built on three avatars, like customers that I have in mind. One is the Christian family, the other is the thematic gamer who's not opposed to Christian themes, and then the Christian gamer who is the intersection of that Venn diagram.
mhm,
They're a person who totally comfortable playing Nemesis, but loves to play games with people and introduce their family. Like
mhm,
they're good with that gateway. They're like they're a Christian gamer who's satisfied with a gaming experience and a Christian experience.
yeah,
And then, there's the gamer who's like interested in a gaming experience that has rich theme, but they're not in opposition to religion or Christianity.
mhm,
Because that's really key. Like I'm not an apologist. I'm not trying to reach that group. Like if they're opposed, like you're not gonna like it. Like that's fine. You're just not in the if you happen to stumble upon it and enjoy it, that's fantastic. But like it's an accident. It's not intentional.
yeah. I think it's important to have a sharp target market, and with a religious theme game and really like like a customer avatar that has religion as a part of the, I guess the elements that make that avatar your ideal customer.
Mhm.
By the way, for people that don't know what a customer avatar is, it's basically just your ideal customer, and you take elements of your ideal customers, the people that really, really love your stuff, and you make up kind of a persona that you're
Mhm.
marketing to. For
Yeah.
me, my persona I've shared on the podcast before, but their name is Chris. They are in their mid-30s with 2 kids and whatever. I get really detailed, and
Yeah.
they have these particular interests. They love Lord of the Rings. They love Stormlight Archive. They, used to read Harry Potter a lot, but now whatever. And the more detailed you get, the more information you can get that's actually like spot on. The
Mhm.
better you know your customer, the more you can market to that person. And that's going to mean that marketing to that person might kind of exclude other groups. And, or it actually might surprise you. You might have other people that are much like that target that you didn't expect. And actually, that's one thing that we could talk about, that I learned between that first and second Kickstarter or crowdfunding campaign is who my customer avatars are. But I wanna give you the opportunity to finish what you were getting at if you had more to add.
Yeah, I think you know, I think the point that we're trying to make with funding goal is something like return rate. Like
Mhm,
because there's that connection, like Melissa did the art for both gardeners and sowers. If you like the art of gardeners, you'll like the art of sowers.
mhm,
There's like if you like the character design, you'll like the character design. If you like the opportunity to look for biblical connections to discipleship, like you will find that in both gardeners and sowers. So like those elements are all there. Also, these are gateway. So like they're games that like they're not just going to satisfy your gamer group. You could also just like order them as a family. It might stretch you a little bit, but it feels like a game that you've played before. So like there is that return rate opportunity. And I was baking that in because I did really minimal marketing for sowers. Like I didn't spend a ton on ads or do much in that regard. I had one ad that was performing as expected, like $2 per lead, right?
mhm.
It's like I was like, great, okay, we got that ad going. We'll get some people from it. But like my projections on what that would mean in terms of follower count and then backers and dollars was a little bit lower than what I knew I needed to fund day one. However, I also baked in there is a return rate element. So I had
Mhm.
like a small percentage that I was like, they'll just come because they back gardeners.
Mm.
Like there is an element of that. And
Yep.
so thankfully I was right.
Yeah, yeah. I actually find that if so the very first podcast episode we ever did was
Mhm.
related to Kickstarter referral metrics. We tried to explain away Kickstarter
Yeah.
referral metrics, and you know, that's kind of what one of the things that got us started. And um the short version is at the time we estimated that for every 6 backers that you bring yourself,
Mhm.
Kickstarter or other sources will bring 4 more.
Yeah.
And it's really for every 6 to 7 backers, Kickstarter will bring 3 to 4 more.
Mhm.
And, that just based on averages, that's like the shortest way I can explain. Now, I would say Kickstarter, if you bring in 8 backers, Kickstarter will bring in 2 more.
Yeah.
Um, and, maybe 2 to 3 more. If you bring in 7 to 8 backers, Kickstarter will bring in 2 to 3 more. That's kind
Yeah.
of what I'm seeing. So,
Yeah.
um, the short is if you fund 70% of the way with your own effort, Kickstarter will fund you 30, the remaining 30%.
Yeah.
Just through exposure, through others sharing, your people that backed the game that share in groups or whatever that you're not a part of, or maybe just on their personal pages or with a friend. I've had people, go to small group and share with their small group people and be like, we got to
Yeah.
back this game. And they're trying to like
Yeah.
work on all their friends to back it because it's a thing, that we should all have. And
Yeah.
there are just so many circles that you will never be able to enter into that all your people travel in. It's because it's their circle. And
Yeah.
that I think that phenomenon is really what funds the rest of the campaign. And I did this a long time ago. I did a poll back in 2021, right after I funded our first Kickstarter, and I asked how people found us.
Mhm.
It was the most interesting question that I asked on this
Mm.
very large poll. Um,
Yeah.
and it was there were 22% of the whole pie, the largest segment, found us through Kickstarter. That
Mm.
exploded my mind because at the time I spent a lot on Facebook. Well, I thought it was a lot, $6,000, which is not chump change, but at the same time, it's from what I understand now and what some of our clients spend, it's like, some people have really large budgets for Facebook ads, YouTube ads, that kind of thing. But
Yeah.
the it just blew my mind that almost over 22% of our people found us via Kickstarter by itself. And
Yeah.
then in addition to that, you've got people that jumped in via Facebook, almost 20% jumped in via Facebook ad. And then you
Yeah.
had like 10% on Board Game Geek and other sources. But I was really surprised at the time how many people actually just discovered us after we launched.
Yeah.
Because I thought we had been, I did my very best to do, marketing everywhere, but there are just so many circles that you do not travel that you can't find access to. It's not easy, through Facebook, through whatever. There are a lot of people that have, like my
Yeah.
artist, he doesn't even have social media, It's like,
Yeah.
find it.
Well, like one of the things that I'm experimenting with, Andrew, is I'm like what for prestige, I'm running on BackerKit. I'm like nervous about it because
Ah,
I don't know how BackerKit's going to do for crowdfunding. Like, but I'm eager to try. And one of the primary reasons I did it was because I'm running multiple campaigns, keep them
mhm,
separate so people
yeah,
don't get confused.
yep,
Like, wait, am I following this or not? It's
uh,
like, well, you're following on BackerKit because if you are, you're following Prestige and you're in
yeah,
the right place. That was like one of the reasons.
mhm,
Another reason was for approval. As a
yeah,
small creator who's like funded once, I
yeah,
wasn't confident that Kickstarter would let me run back-to-back campaigns. And
mhm,
BackerKit was actually emailing me like, "Hey, can we do a campaign for you?" I'm like, "Sure, let's
yeah,
do it." You know. So, but I think one of the things that's nice about that is like with Kickstarter, you might be tempted to bake those numbers in
mhm,
and say like, "Well, I know I'm going to get 20% from Kickstarter also."
right,
It's like, maybe,
yeah,
the Kickstarter landscape is constantly changing, and for sure you'll get 20% of your Facebook group and 20% of your
yep,
Kickstarter pre-launch followers, but you don't know for sure what discovery is going to result in.
yeah,
So,
yeah,
like with BackerKit, I just completely write it off. Like I
mhm,
can't count on BackerKit at all. So in that case, it's all about what we bring,
yep,
and I know what we're bringing. So like I know what the goal needs to be to fund day one based on what we're bringing,
yeah,
and I think that's a big lesson learned for me is like don't uh bet on something that is not a sure thing.
yeah. Yeah, I remember asking my mom about this. So there was this life insurance guy that was like, you need a universal life policy and this and that. I was like, okay, but I can't really afford that. But if I really need it, like I can find things to cut out of my budget to afford it. I talked to my
Yeah.
mom. I was like, hey mom, and I think I've shared this on the podcast before. I was like, mom, one of my, big mentors, somebody I respect a lot that just I can go to and ask, stuff. I was like, Mom, should I get this universal life policy? And she was like, Son, you should buy what you can afford and then pray for the rest because you can't control everything. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
flood insurance and earthquake insurance and hail insurance and whatever,
Yeah.
like all of these things. Like at a certain point, you're going to run out of money for things like bread and milk, and so
Yeah.
you just can't afford it all. And so
Yeah.
you you have to control what you're able to control and then
Hmm.
leave the rest that you cannot control. Don't focus on it, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so in the same way, likening it to a Kickstarter campaign, you can control what how often you're updating, being diligent with your emails once a month, being diligent with your Kickstarter updates on a regular basis. For me, it's once a month. On the last day of the month, come hell or high water, I
Yeah.
will publish a Kickstarter update.
And
Um,
you are so good at that. Like one of the other things we haven't talked about is I'm a big Deliverance like supporter, super fan. I play it a lot. Uh,
awesome.
so I always read those updates. I'm like,
Tell me
yes, he
more
did it.
about myself.
He did it again every day, every last day. He always does it.
Yeah. I will say, I mean, on April 30th, no, that was just a few days ago. The March 31st, that actually was Easter.
Yeah.
And I was like, there is no way I'm gonna get an update out today. But I published an update that was like, hey guys, an update's coming. Oh, it's like, wait 3 days, very thematically Easter. But it just was the first time that I didn't deliver the full package on the last day of the month. I don't know why the last day, just it seemed like it was the easiest way for me to share. It's like what's happened in this last month rather than like the first day is like what's going to happen this next month. What, the first day of, I'm talking about the last month. It's like, it's so old, like what happened last month is like, tell me what's happening now. But anyway.
Yeah. It's like, it's easy to remember too. It's like, that's a date you can say like, okay, I know what it is.
Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes like, April 30th is one of my daughter's birthdays. It's like, I have to figure this one out. It's like, I just have to do it. It's become something that, I've been able to do this the last day of the month and then write an email update based on the update that I wrote on Kickstarter and get that out like the first week or two of the next month, which has been really convenient. So so that's something that I found, it's more like an investment that I have made on purpose, and been as diligent as I can because I want to be successful this next Kickstarter. If I didn't think that it would make a difference in how well we did during our next Kickstarter, if I didn't think that it would cause more of our fans to stay close, more of our fans to play our game more times, then it was just like, why am I doing this? I would give an update every 3 to 3 months, like a quarterly update instead, because it takes a lot of time. I talk a lot, I write a lot. So when I write an update, it's like, takes the whole day. Yeah. So, like this last update, it took me like 4 hours and it was a short one. It's like I wrote a lot, but the 4-hour time commitment was like relatively low on the amount of updates take.
There's something about that too. Like the way you communicate matches your game. Like there's a lot to the, like you go, whoa, there's a lot to this email. It's like, it's because there's a lot to Deliverance. Like it's a lifestyle game. It's like you're going all into this. Like you could play it for years and years. Well, I want to like be cognizant of time, and we probably could do 2 parts on this.
Oh, easily we could
episode, because I have a question for you if you have the time to get into it. That probably turn into a conversation.
Yeah. So let's so what we're gonna do is we're going to pause this episode now, and then we're gonna get into part 2, which is gonna come out next week. And it should be a grand old time. So for now, to respect everybody's time listening to this podcast or this video thing, Robot Richard, send us on out.
Well, that's all the time we have for this week's episode of Crowdfunding Nerds. For more resources, articles, and to listen to past podcasts, please visit us at crowdfundingnerds.com. And if you have a crowdfunding question, we also have a page on our site where you can send a message directly to us. Please visit crowdfundingnerds.com/question. And if your question is a great question, we may include it in a future podcast. Thank you all again for listening to this week's episode, and we'll see you next week. Stay nerdy.